Good afternoon or evening, actually, and welcome to my hypersomnia video diary. This is day number 8, and I just want to say so. Talk to I've had a couple comments posted, and I'm really grateful of that. And I've also gotten feedback from a few people that I know, and honestly, I love any part of the feedback you can tell me. So, whether something needs to be explained more, or my audio sounds like crap, or just anything, or ask questions, please, because this is what I mean. This is really for me. Like, um, hopefully, it helps other people. But I'm trying to help myself through this whole thing first, 100%. So today, I thought it would be really really good, and I made a whole series of I have screenshots and facts and figures and charts today, so this ought to be pretty informative, and a lot less rambling. So I'm gonna make my way over to my documentation, but so the things that I'm gonna cover today are, again, and I'm gonna say it again. This is not something that is easily diagnosed, tested, measured, recorded, documented. Um, so there is a lot of uh, like mystery to it, or misunderstood facts and information, or even it's like, if you can't see it, then how is it really there? Like one of those kinds of things. And I think, again, this all just plays into the fact that this disease is so rare and so random and so mysterious to even the most smartest geneticists and psychiatrists, biologists in the world, that no one really knows about it. Um, I just want to kind of start this out. So, how can anyone, patient, doctor, biologist, chemist, psychiatrist, geneticist, or otherwise, say that a condition exists if it cannot be physically seen by the human eye or a camera? It cannot be touched by hands or instruments. It cannot be smelled. It cannot be found or located within the human body or brain or other organs via typical methods like MRIs and CAT scans, and other high tech analyzation devices. um, it was a very interesting question, right? In my opinion, most diseases, sicknesses, illnesses, viruses, what have you, generally have symptoms we all know, we can see them, and we've likely experienced them. I think when you experience something, that's the greatest form of empathy, in a sense. Once you've experienced something, you truly know what it means to experience that, right? Things like the flu can be measurable in a fever, or you're discharging mucus everywhere. Cancer creates a cavity that can be seen. There's different types of cancer, so I'm not going to get very specific, but cancer creates a cavity that can be seen, cut into, cut out, tested. It's like a living, breathing, it's its own entity, in a sense. Um, you can touch a lump, if someone has cancer and things like that. There's even cases where dogs can smell cancer in people. If you have liver problems, you get yellowing in the skin very visibly. People with Tourette's call out. People with multiple sclerosis have a degenerative physical and cognitive issue that's very visible. And even things like, typically, or the most loosest general definition of being mentally handicapped, it physically looks like something, people with Down syndrome and stuff. And so it's easy. It's like everyone's grown up with that. They know it. They see and it's in your face. So yes, it's part of your reality. Um, Even things like Alzheimer's, you can look at their brain and you can see the levels of dopamine, in the the disability, I guess, of their brains to retain information and in memory, and due to what's happening to core and measurable and seeable chemical processes in their brains. You can even look at the brain and DNA of a person and determine the likelihood of them being a serial killer now. So it makes sense that hypersomnia is not understood or discussed, because there's not much to say. Doctors, And geneticists to this day, more research is always being done, things come out, but no one still knows the cause, the mystery, or where it's located within the body. Obviously, it affects the brain mostly, but still. So what's my point? Hypersomnia was originally referred to in the medical world as narcolepsy without cataplexy, or stage 2 narcolepsy. Um, Hypersomnia has now in recent years been moved out of the stage 2 category and into its own stage because it has differences to even stage 2. But if my hypersomnia had been stage 1 narcolepsy, then I would have cataplexy, and that would mean I'd pass out standing up. If you tickled me hard enough, I'd fall over and fall asleep for a few seconds. You'd see it. You'd see the cataplexy, and it would probably be very easy to say, "Holy crap, that's a narcolepsy. That's a sleep disorder." I just watched it happen, right? Unfortunately, hypersomnia's only visible symptoms are, and the only things that can be measured are stuff that makes you just look tired, you look lazy. Some people may think you're slow, or you didn't get enough sleep last night, or you look like you have a bad memory. Um, like I think it's impossible for me to show you a picture of a hypersomnia tumor. I can't even get a doctor to say where in the brain that it comes from. I don't have, uh, you know, I don't have an ointment that I can buy, that would maybe treat something like chickenpox blisters that I could show you, and I don't have any prescribed stomach meds to stop a stomach virus from making me vomit. I cannot even show you anything that you would typically expect to see. So how can I make my original point? Thankfully, people with narcolepsy and other sleep disorders can get accurate testing that properly identifies their own sleep disorders, not even common ones, and then have them diagnosed and treated. Your brain waves and body movements can be recorded, and your sleepiness can be measured, and your cognitive skills can be measured in these tests. When you combine these tests together, they look at things like your ability to recover from sleep, what your sleep latency is, when your REM starts, and how your other phases of sleep are affected, and what your brain is doing at those times. So what's cool though is there are two tests that can be used to diagnose narcolepsy and hypersomnia, idiopathic hypersomnia, and a lot of other sleep disorders. Um, it's a two-phase test. It's called a polysomnography analysis that is done in the evening. So you have to show up at the sleep lab. I think I had to be there at like 6 or 7 p.m. or something. That's when we started. Um, that one is done through the evening, and you're literally hooked up to, you're in like a proper full-on medical sleep lab. It's very, very, lots of instruments and scientific things going on there. But there's the polysomnography analysis, and then there's also the multiple sleep latency test, which is referred to as MSLT. That that test is conducted the following morning, and what's done there, as I mentioned, is they wake you up several times. I'm going to explain what each of the tests are in more accurate detail in a second, but basically they have to look at you at night. They make their benchmarks. They see what how you compare to normal people, and then they do the daytime one to accurately identify how tired you are throughout the day, and what effect that has on you, and why is that? Do you have sleep apnea, or do you really have a medical condition like hypersomnia? So first, I want to pull up a screenshot so that we can kind of we have a benchmark comparison, right? This screenshot, and as it comes up now, is showing two graphs. It's going to compare a normal person's REM sleep cycle through one night and day, as compared to someone with narcolepsy stage 1. I could not find a narcolepsy stage 2 comparison, or one directly to hypersomnia, but being that idiopathic hypersomnia is in the same family and closely related to stage one, I think I'm sorry, stage two narcolepsy, it's important to keep in mind that this would be similar, or it's at least a viable comparison. So what you can see here is the normal person on the top. It looks like at about midnight. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, at about midnight or so, they're falling asleep. They're going through their different sleep cycles and patterns there. They're getting up at 8, and that whole sleep cycle, even though it's subdivided into multiple cycles and some that reoccur, is completely over, and that one whole event is done. And then you look at the bottom one, someone with narcolepsy, and it's like someone's just throwing rocks blindly at a wall or something. You look at the difference here. Notice, let's see. Notice that the second graph. There is a complete inability to have normal sleep phases. The brain is literally starting and stopping the phases outside of normal human sleep patterns. This guy's getting REM sleep conditions coming in at 4 in the afternoon. This sounds familiar. It's a military time here. Right, 8 at night, and then his typical ones kind of start, but it starts heavy, at midnight. I think that's really interesting to look at. The brain of someone with these types of sleep disorders, it cannot deliver proper restful night of sleep because it can't keep one full cycle together. It's firing different cycles at different times, basically. So I thought now that we see a normal brain compared to a narcoleptic's brain, now let's have a look at what are the differences in the 3 stages of narcolepsy. So the next slide I'm going to pull up, it's basic, but it's pretty interesting. You can see narcolepsy type 1, type 2, and idiopathic hypersomnia. Notice that hypersomnia is free completely from cataplexy and difficulty falling back asleep or staying asleep during the night. Completely free of those symptoms. It is the only one of the 3 to have sleep drunkenness, which is one of the ways that this gets diagnosed and explained a lot. It more than sometimes occasionally it only occasionally has refreshing or restorative sleep. So only very occasionally or very rarely. For me, I think when I really look at it, there's probably 3 days a month where I wake up and I say, oh wow, I slept really good last night and I feel really good. Let's get on and start the day. That's unmedicated. It just doesn't occur like very very often at all. So again, this is a basic one, but it kind of gives you a breakdown of the differences in the 3 types of narcolepsy there. This is still I'm sorry, this all probably still sounds pretty odd in a way, but like when you actually look at what the tests are measuring and what the data results mean and how that's used by doctors, that's what's awesome. So what is a polysomnography? So I'll pull this slide up here. So it literally is, like I mentioned before, electrodes plugged into your whole entire body, head to toe. It's measuring your EEG, EOG, EMG, EKG, your airflow, your other respiratory efforts, your O2 saturation within your blood, and more. I don't know what all those acronyms mean. I'm sorry that I don't, but please look them up if you need to know. It also serves as a diagnostic tool for the evaluation of normal and disturbed sleep. It has to be done by a trained technologist, and the technologists are in the lab. They independently work from the doctor and then send their results over to the doctor. And I just want to say that the PSG, it's also called, is not a fun or even comfortable test. Have a look at this slide here. This is literally what I had to do, and this is only there's not a whole lot of screenshots on the internet of this, but on the left side you can see the person's head connected to tons of wires, the electrodes going into in between their hair and attaching to their brain. Those are all over your body, like you literally feel like you have wires just coming out of you, and mind you, you have to spend the night in this lab with all these things attached to you. If you look at the screenshot on the right, that's a guy actually carrying around his wire box, which I had to do all night long. So every time you get up to go to the bathroom, they have to disconnect you from everything. You have to carry around your wires until you get to the next place, until you get settled, what have you. So not very fun at all. It's a pretty serious test. I think that like, why would anyone do that? If they weren't really concerned with their sleep. um, so just a little bit more about the PSG. So it's looking at things like your brain waves, your muscle tension, eye movement, breathing. So it's really trying to measure how well do you sleep at night, what's the quality of that sleep when you're going into REM, things like that. So this is where then the next morning the MSLT will come in. So this is, again, to measure all of the daytime sleepiness issues. So, and you can see from the slide here, there's roughly 4 to 5 naps at 20-minute durations every 2 hours during the day. So for me, they woke me up at 6 a.m., let me get breakfast. I think I took a shower, and then at 6:30 or 6:45 or something, I think, or maybe it was 8. Yeah, actually, after I had been up for 2 hours talking to them, they let me like read the paper and watch TV, I think, for a little bit, and I had to do some cognitive stuff. Then they led me back to the sleep room and said, okay, lay down and see if you can go to sleep. And I did within just a matter of minutes. And then this went on 4 more times, so it would have been woken up at 6. The first one was at 8, then 10, then 12, then 2. What they're saying is the latency of sleep onset for each nap is averaged to determine the daytime sleep latency. Normal daytime sleep latency is greater than 10 to 15 minutes. So what I gather from this is, on average, when you are able to fall asleep during the day consecutive times after eating and doing normal things, and then go into these sleep patterns within 10 minutes, that is cause for that's one of the confirmations of idiopathic hypersomnia. Using the results from both of these tests is where you get your proper diagnosis. Again, I was diagnosed with stage 2 narcolepsy at that time, so obviously they could rule out cataplexy, sleep apnea, and other things like that. Again, hence, this is not an easy diagnosis. It takes these multiple tests and sometimes multiple follow-up visits, follow-up tests, other interviews with your doctor. It's not like a very easy process to go through at all. If anyone is aware too, stimulants are like Schedule 2 or Schedule 2, I think, which is the highest scheduling before being completely illegal. Doctors don't want to diagnose people with hypersomnia, because a lot of times you have to go on stimulants and you have to really prove the need for a stimulant. It's really interesting. There's a few other tests outside of the PSG and the MSLT, but those are the general standards worldwide. I still have copies of all my original test paperwork, and I'll never forget the day that after I got all that done, it takes a few weeks after you get everything done, the doctor calls you back, and then I had to sit there and listen to him tell me how I had a disease that no one knew why it was caused, how in the body, it would affect me, and they can guess over time where its origination in my brain was, or it could not explain my unique set of symptoms as well. I'll never forget that, and that is why to this day I keep hard copies of all my paperwork, and every time I have to change doctors and leave the country, go out of state, see a doctor, in between doctors, I have to bring all my sleep paperwork studies, because no one believes you. No one wants to say you don't have a sleep disorder or whatever, and that's come from doctors before, like saying it to my face, until I pull out my documentation, and they never once argue with this, because you cannot. So if anyone out there needs proof, I have it. There's tests to prove it. They're not common, and you've probably never heard of them before, but they're accurate, and it's like, at least I have that. and at least everyone with a sleep disorder can at least have this, because before I got these tests done, I literally had no idea what was wrong with me, and I'm just constantly thinking, this makes no sense. And at least even though hypersomnia is not fully understood, at least it has a name, and at least there's some general information about it, and at least that there's people here talking about it, and again, I thank you, and hopefully this was a bit more formulated and the audio quality is better and it's a better experience overall. I'm going to try to keep improving the videos as time goes on. I don't know if I'm going to go into Vyvanse. I haven't completed all my research on that yet, and there is a couple of other things I did want to go into, but I will put a formal video focus when I submit the next video. Thank you again.